Today, the topic is fear, and we're talking to Dr. CPoe. Of course, Dr. Poe, before we had our second commercial break, we promised that we would come back and give you an opportunity to further elaborate upon some of the faces of fear. You've already given us some information in reference to depression, but let's have you to continue to elaborate upon some of the faces of fear in such a way that our audience will have a very, very good idea of exactly what these faces are.
Right. Of course, now, when we say faces, we mean the many ways in which fear expresses itself. Another face of fear is irritability. You know, oftentimes people get irritable and they are persistently irritable, and often the underlying problem is excessive fear related to their self-centered lifestyle. Okay. Another manifestation of excessive fear, which is very widespread, and that's chronic fatigue, feeling tired all the time. Another manifestation of excessive fear, I believe, is mood swings. People who feel up in the morning, down in the afternoon, or vice versa, or they just kind of go through their day up and down. Another manifestation of excessive fear, another face of excessive fear, is feelings of inadequacy or inferiority, which, as you know, is very widespread.
Talk about, what do you mean when you talk about the feeling of inferiority and as a face of fear? What do you mean when you talk about inferiority, Dr. Poe?
Well, the feeling of inferiority, I think, is a manifestation of excessive fear. And as we said, excessive fear most often is a manifestation of what I would say is persistent pleasure-centered behavior or persistent self-centered behavior. And so when people are persistently self-centered, one of the consequences, as we said, is excessive fear. Now, that excessive fear really ends up being guilt. And guilt then results in a bad feeling inside. And so guilt also is essentially the same as shame. So then when I'm self-centered, when I don't treat other people like I want to be treated, one of the consequences is excessive fear or guilt or shame. And that feeling of shame causes me to, or that feeling of guilt or shame, and that excessive fear causes me to feel small. It causes me to feel small. It causes me to feel inadequate. It causes me to feel like I'm not quite what I should be. And I think that there's purpose. There's good purpose to that because it's a warning to the person. It's a signal. It's a wake-up call that you need to take a look at your lifestyle. You need to take a look at how you're treating other people. And you need to make some changes. Because you see, if the guilt or the excessive fear or the shame did not occur in the person who is living a self-centered lifestyle, they would have no motivation to change.
And they would continue to do the things that they've been doing.
Absolutely.
And simply because, but the fact that shame does bring on this feeling of not being adequate, that there's a great possibility that if they are aware of it. Now, what about some of these folks that you're talking about, and I have identified just many folks that you're talking about here, but some of these folks, I know it's good to present them with the information and then give them a choice, but some of these folks don't want to hear any information at all.
True, because oftentimes the motive of self-centered behavior is pleasure or self-gratification. If my number one goal in life is to experience pleasure, if that's my motivation, then I'm not going to want to hear anything that suggests that I change my lifestyle, because I have learned to enjoy to some extent the pleasure that I get from being self-centered. But of course, the pleasure that's derived from being self-centered has a downside, and that is, even though a person may be experiencing pleasure, they're also doing damage to their body, to their mind, to their spirit, and to their relationships, as well as to their future. That's the downside. And they're also contributing to the increased prevalence or possibilities of developing depression, chronic anxiety problems, chronic paranoia, chronic physical illnesses such as hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, and so on.
All of these are diseases that you could generally associate with fear. Is that what?
I generally associate with these diseases with self-centered behavior and the excessive fear or the chronic stress that's a consequence of self-centered behavior over time, persistent self-centered behavior. Now, we do know from research that many chronic physical illnesses, as well as many chronic mental illnesses, are stress-related. And so when I say stress, to me, stress in many ways is the same as excessive fear. Excessive fear really is another word for chronic stress.
And so many people today, as we know from just general information, period, do experience this kind of stress. And of course, Dr. Poe, we're getting ready for the end of this show, and let me thank you for coming by and giving us that information, but we know that we did not receive everything dealing with fear, and we know that you've got a lot of additional information to bring to us, and we want to make sure that we do that because we want to have you back again the next time so that we can talk about some other aspects of fear and get you to elaborate upon some of these other topics. But in the meantime, let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.